So, how do you think you'd make something like this? The extrude wouldn't cut it. Nothing about that baby that looks like a single shape pushed in one direction. The lathe? Well, that one requires the entire shape to be symmetrical. I think if nothing else, the shape of the handle would pretty much disqualify us using that command. How about something like box modeling? I don't know. The screwdriver looks like it's got quite a few smooth and rounded off areas, so I'd probably kick that technique down the road too. No, the ticket to creating this little guy is the loft command. Remember how we can position different shapes on different levels of the path? Well, that's exactly what's happening here. What do you think? Would you know how to go about making the shape? Why don't we go ahead and do it together? Why don't we take a look at the completed project first? If we go to File, Open, let's go into the Chapter 8 Project Screwdriver folder. And from here, I'd like you to choose Lofted Screwdriver Completed. Very good. Now what I've done is take a series of shapes, mostly just standard circles and rectangles, and lofted them at different points along a straight line. That's about it. It's that easy. Now this handle, that though might be a little bit of a different situation. That's no standard shape. Let's actually take a look at the shape that was used to make that part of the screwdriver. I'm going to select the screwdriver, and I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Now what I want to focus in on is this pink little wireframe shape right here. Let's do this. Let's isolate the selection. We'll right-click with our mouse, choose the Isolate Selection command, and we'll now go back to a four-way screen and look at this from the top view. Let's go ahead and maximize that. Now how would you make a shape like that? Let me show you how. I'd like you to go to a file here. Let's do a File, Open. No reason to save any of this. And from here, let's go ahead and choose Loft Screwdriver Grip. Very good. Now we're going to make ours directly on top of the existing one. We'll kind of use this as a reference as we get going. Now before we begin, I want you to notice how everything seems to be centered again directly up against those heavy black lines. It just makes it easier if we work that way. So let's do this. We'll go to the Ngon command over in the Shapes. I'm going to want to use my snap for this, so we'll activate the snap command. Let's right-click on that icon also and make sure that we're set to grid points. Looks pretty good to me. Close that out. You can see how we're snapping now to the individual grid lines. Let's put our mouse directly in the middle of those crosshairs and pull away. Now what you want to do is you want to go out so those vertices kind of line up directly up against the green existing line. And using the snap, that actually works out pretty good. Now what we're going to do on this is change this to a total number of 6 sides. Let's first of all turn off our snap. Let's go over to the Modify column, change it to 6, and now I want you to turn on the circular option down below. Now what we're going to want to do is change the number of sides on this. Let's go to the Modify column. Let's change the number of sides to 5, and let's go ahead and activate the circular option. Very good. Now I want to get down to the sub-object level. Now we're going to show you something a little bit later on, so just follow me for the time being on this. First of all, I think the circle, it's actually an Ngon, I think this rounded shape could actually be a little bit smoother. Let's open up the Interpolation tab. And let's change the number of steps on this, and this will simply smoothen out our circle. Let's change the number of steps on this to 25. Very good. Now, we need to get this down to the sub-object level. Now stay with me. Add the Edit Spline modifier. Very good. Let's go to the sub-object level. Now, what I want to do, let me zoom into one little particular area here. What I want to do is to create a couple other vertices now against this Ngon to kind of lock down this area. I'm going to end up taking the middle one here and kind of pulling it down in each instance. So watch what we do. Let's go to the Refine command. And now I want you to click. You can see how we're using this now for reference. Go ahead and click on both sides right where the green line starts to bend down. See what we've done there? Now we'll go ahead and hold down our mouse to pan around, zoom in a little bit by rolling our wheel, and let's do this now in each and every instance. So we'll kind of come around. Just takes a little bit of time, but it'll be worth it in the long run. Holding down the mouse again to pan. And again, just continuing to refine by adding in these couple little vertices on both ends. There we go. Really wasn't that bad. Let's get out of the Refine command by right-clicking, and let's go ahead now and hit Z to kind of recenter ourselves. Now what we're going to end up doing in each of these instances, check this out, we have 3 vertices that we're now going to select the middle one in each case and then kind of pull that in. So let's go back to the Select command. We're still in vertex mode. Hold down your Control key, and in each case, pick on the middle vertex. Very good. Now this is where we're going to kind of pull them into the middle. That's a scale option. Let's activate the Scale command. Now look again, the gizmo is positioned on one of the vertices. We want to reposition the gizmo to the origin of our scene. Actually, to the center of the object would also work. So let's simply go up to the top, change Use Pivot Center down to the one that has the red ball in between the two boxes, and look where that repositions the pivot. Now we're going to want to scale this in both the Y and the red directions, both green and red, so activate not the gold triangle, but the gold bracket right above it. Very good. Let's now go ahead and scale this down, and you want to drop these vertices so they're right at the bottom of that original green shape. See how that reference is really coming into play? Doesn't have to be perfect. Very good. Now let's go in on one of these vertices. We'll go ahead and pan in, roll our wheel to zoom. And even though I'm a little bit low, I'm going to be fine with this. What I now want to do is to be able to pull out my Bezier handles to kind of reform the segments on both sides. Now, I want to do this on each and every one of these selected vertices. I think Lock Handles needs to be put down in this case. Let's go in our Modify column, activate the Lock Handles command, and now go to the Move option, grab one of the Bezier handles. You're now controlling all of the 5 selected vertices and pull those out. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and roll the wheel to zoom out and see whether or not that happened in each case. Absolutely. Great job. Now, let's go ahead and deselect the vertices, go back up to the top of the edit spline, and frankly, I don't think there's any reason to keep the original green shape. Let's go ahead and zoom in so we can easily pick that. Let's go ahead and select that, and we'll hit delete. Now let's select ours, and let's rename it. Let's call this Grip. We'll press Enter to lock it down. Again, I'll click in the middle of the screen and simply hit Z. So it looked pretty difficult on the outset. Really, once we used the right technique, it went pretty easily, didn't it? So that really gets the only tough shape out of the way. Let's go ahead now and create the rest of the shapes that we're going to need for this. Now again, each of these shapes is going to be generated off the origin of the scene where those black crosshairs meet. So I again think Snap is the way to go. Let's go ahead and make sure again this is set to grid. We can see that simply by moving it around. And I think we're ready to rock. Let's now create the other parts that we're going to be using as shapes for our screwdriver. We'll go to the Circle command. We'll go to the middle of our screen. And right from the origin, we'll pull away. Let's go ahead and give this a radius of, let's say, 45. Now, we're going to be needing certain names on these. They'll continue to be called circles, but there will be a couple of them. Let's go up and see what we have for a name. Circle 01 actually is going to work pretty good for us. Let's see what happens now. Let's go for another circle. Again, go back to the origin of the scene, pull away. And let's give this one a radius of about 75. This will just make sure that everybody's kind of matches up the same on the completed project. One more circle is what we're going to need. In the middle we go. And why don't we give this one a radius of, let's say, 20. Press Enter to lock that in. Now, if you're wondering whether or not we could have just used one circle and maybe scaled it back and forth as we needed as we traveled down the path with these multiple shapes, we could have done that. This technique we're using, though, might make it just a little bit easier to understand the first time through. When you get a little more comfortable, you can simply use the technique that works best for you. Now, why don't we go ahead and change the wireframe colors on a couple of these. We'll turn the snap off. I want to kind of keep these separate, so we'll come over here. I'll make one yellow. I'll make one kind of a bright pink. And the last one here, we'll kind of go with a blue. There we go. Now, these are our circle shapes. We've got one more in mind here, and this is going to be the blade. We'll make that with a rectangle. Again, let's go back and activate the snap command. Let's go into our shapes, to our rectangle. Now, this one, we have an option down here under Creation Method. It's been set to Edge all along. Let's change this over to Center. This way, when we start creating our new rectangle, this one will actually be created from the center of the object itself. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll simply pull away. We'll turn the snap off. That's about all we're going to need for that. Let's go ahead and type in a couple values on this. Now, again, this is going to be the blade for our screwdriver. How about a length of about 13? And how about a width of, let's say, about 80? We'll go ahead and lock that in. And we'll get out of the rectangle command and deselect everything. Let's now go back to a four-way view. Now, we need the line we're going to be using for our path. Let's go to the line command. And we're going to do a couple things here. First of all, under creation method, I'm going to ask you to change the drag type to corner. This will create corner vertices at both ends. We actually are going to nail this down with only 2 vertices, one on each end. And by changing this to corner, it'll just assure us that everything stays perfectly straight. Let's now use the keyboard entry to enter a few values. We'll open up the tab. Now, the first point will actually be set at the origin, where everything else has been created, so simply click Add Point. Very good. Now, if you notice, look at the stick in the perspective view, and it's the Z direction that seems to be kind of lining up, going down the shaft of this thing. So what we're going to be doing is now adding our second point by changing the Z value. Let's go into the Z, and after a little experimentation, I found the length of this should be about minus 1750. Go ahead. This is just controlling now the distance of our line. Get that in place, and now click on Add Point. Very good. If we now get out of the line command, deselect everything, hit Z, there we go. You can now see how everything's kind of starting to line up. Now, this is going to give us all the shapes we need. In our next video, we're going to start lofting these along the path. Let's get to that.